And Charles, you said you're ready?
Yes.
Okay, welcome to the February 10th meeting of the Town of Southampton Conservation Board. In accordance with the governor's executive orders, all of the board's meetings will be held remotely via video conference until further notice. So we ask the public to continually check the town's website for updates and new information. The link to participate in this meeting via Zoom can be found on the town's website. The meeting is also live streamed on the town's website. If you do not wish to speak at the live meeting, but you would like to submit comments for the public record, the link to submit comments can also be found on the town's website. Board members who must recuse themselves from any application will state so on the record and will be removed from the meeting until the end of the discussion and vote on the application. As a reminder, we ask the applicants and their agents to please state their names and addresses for the record. Please join together for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic
for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Then we'll have a roll call, just like we've had other times. Harry, aye, here. Tom?
Tom Rickenback, aye. At present.
Jerry? And Jerry?
Jerry Collins, aye.
Michael?
Present.
And I expect George to join us soon. We'll see him come in when he gets there. What is your pleasure for the January 27th, 2021 minute?
Move to be accepted as presented.
Second.
All in favor? Harry, aye. Tom?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
Michael? Aye. Advisory reports, ZBA, Robert Crabb.
Marty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. This is a pending application for an existing residentially developed property located at East Shore Drive in the hamlet of North Sea. There are several recommended comments. The first indicates that the property for which pyramid height and number of stories variances are being sought fronts on both Little, Peconic Bay, and Fresh Pond, and contains town and state regulated tidal wetlands. Second, the comments note that in May of 2019, the Conservation Board had granted conditional approval to demolish the existing residence and accessory structures and to build a new dwelling with accessory improvements. The conditional approval of the project is set to expire May 22nd, 2022. Thirdly, the survey which has been submitted as part of the variance application is generally consistent with the Conservation Board's conditional approval. However, the applicant will need to get the approval modified, and that's in order to authorize the installation of the planned underground propane tank. And the last comment simply indicates that notwithstanding the resolution of conditional approval, no determination has been made with regards to the compatibility of the requested relief with the variance issuance standards that's set forth in the town's building and zoning code.
Thank you, Marty. Is there a motion to send those comments to the planning board or to the ZBA?
Which
To the
sends
ZBA.
comments to ZBA.
Well, I skipped the public hearings. I just noticed that.
But we don't have Carrie yet anyway.
Okay. Yeah, she's there. Isn't she there on phone?
I don't know. She's muted and I don't
Yeah.
see her, so.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, okay,
Okay.
fine.
Okay, so it's been moved, and was there a second to send those comments?
I moved them unless someone did it simultaneously. I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Second.
Harry, Tom,
Aye.
Jerry,
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Since we're doing these, let's stick with that, finish up the advisory reports, just one more. 95 Crescent LLC.
The second variance application relates to a property on Crescent Street in the hamlet of Noyak. The first comment indicates that the property for which pool variance setbacks are being sought is situated on Upper Sag Harbor Cove and contains town and state regulated tidal wetlands. The second comment provides some history. It indicates that the Conservation Board had issued a permit for a septic upgrade, as well as for construction of the pool and patio in January of 2020. The third comment indicates that the survey that was submitted with the variance application is consistent with the approved plans. However, it does note that the footprint for the pool has been modified accordingly. The wetlands permit will need to be amended. And the last comment simply indicates that no determination has been made with regards to the compatibility of the requested relief with the variance issuance standards as set forth in the town building and zoning code.
Thank you, Marty. Is there a motion?
Motion to send to the ZBA.
Second.
Tom seconded. All in favor? Harry, aye. Tom,
Aye.
Jerry,
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
And now we'll do the public hearings. A 020033.
Hold on, before we do that, can I ask a question to Kara real quick?
Sure.
Is she online?
Yeah.
Yes.
Kara, I was wondering if you could just clear up for this board the IA system requirements in terms of Town Law 123-52, number A3, an increase of 25% more in floor area of the building. What does that mean?
Okay, I'm gonna have to get back to you on that, Mike. You know, this is not my area since I'm just filling in for Kelly while she's on maternity leave, but I'll be happy to look into it for you.
I appreciate that.
You want to know what the 25% more means, right?
Well, it says an increase of 25% more in the floor area of the building. And I think the board should be well versed on that in terms of if a structure is in a box and we have a whole structure and there is no change in expanding the footprint on the outside or expanding it upstairs, if the floor area, if there was work done inside, that is not an increase in livable space. Floor area and livable space are two different things, is what I want to just clarify.
Okay. All right, Mike, I will definitely get back to you on that.
Okay, because from my understanding, floor area means the whole box as it is. So if there's no extension on that floor area, no second story, that's not an increase. So I just wanted to clear that up for the boards for future hearings so that nobody is disadvantaged during a public hearing.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Okay.
You're
so now
welcome.
Now we'll move on for the public hearings. A 020033 Cowneck Preserve LLC. And this is Aram's application. Is Aram in the waiting room? Charles, do you see Aram there?
He's coming.
There he is. Okay.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Aram Tertunian, First Coastal Corporation, West Hampton Beach, New York.
Hello.
Good evening to all. Mr. Chairman, you want me to intro this? We haven't talked about this project in a while, but I'd be happy to give a little intro if you desire.
We should have an intro, and I'm just toying with the idea whether it should be you or Marty. Uh, uh, Marty, I know, worked with you carefully on this, or you worked with Marty on it too. So you're welcome to, why don't you give the first overview, and then I would like Marty to chime right in and fill in any other places that need to go be filled in.
Okay, great, terrific. I just also like to mention that Mr. David Dubin and Ms. Martha Reichert from Toomey Latham are in the waiting room. So if you have questions for them, you can pull them in. So this project, we had an initial public hearing on it several months ago, and as a result of that hearing, the board requested an analysis of alternatives. We conducted an alternative analysis. The board further asked that that we engaged the town of Southampton in some type of a analysis of whether or not the area that we're attempting to protect would be suitable for a scientific study. I know that members of the board and the town board and the town trustees, as well as the town staff, visited the site, some of them independently, some of them on a cold day. And so I believe most everyone is familiar with the area. As a result of that meeting, Marty prepared a very detailed and, in my opinion, an excellent analysis of how a scientific study could be presented. We very recently, as in yesterday, provided some comments to that. Our comments, I think, are targeted and minor in comparison to the overall work that Marty's already done. Refinements is what I would call them. And so we're here this evening to review basically Marty's work and our comments to that work, and to see if there's a way forward to undertake a scientific analysis of how to improve the habitat at Cow Neck.
Thank you, Aram. Marty.
Yeah, good evening. Marty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. After the initial public hearing on this project, as the applicant alluded to, there was an on-site meeting on November 24th at the North Sea Beach. In attendance was Kristen Chu of this office, board, the Board of Trustees, President Eric Schultz, Supervisor Jay Schneiderman, and David Dubin, counsel for the applicant. We toured the site in order to discuss the applicant's proposal to place staggered boulders on private beach, 1,400 linear feet west of North Sea Road, as a means of potentially deterring vehicular traffic beyond that point, while considering continued allowance for public vehicle use between 1,400 linear feet west and North Sea Road. We had an opportunity to talk about the potential environmental impacts of beach driving. As a consequence of that site meeting, the town supervisor has suggested that we entertain doing a 3-year pilot study in order to see whether or not alternative measures would be effective in deterring vehicles, and also to assess, to get a better handle on whether or not the absence of vehicles on the beach would enhance the wetland values and benefits, including beach and natural vegetation conditions, as well as wildlife habitat. So the supervisor had suggested that I put together a proposal for a pilot scientific study, which, as Aram indicated, I have done. Board members have received copies of that 14-page report. And what it does is it sets out a framework for doing exactly what the supervisor had in mind, to essentially establish two temporary zones, one wherein vehicular driving would continue to be allowed, and the second zone would essentially be a sanctuary area where for a 3-year period, vehicle activity would be stopped. Now, the report, what it looks at is several things. One of them, which the applicant has been helpful in evaluating as well, is whether or not there are other potential options that could be explored in terms of deterring vehicular traffic. The second thing that the study does is it sets out a scientific framework for upon installation of a vehicle barrier, monitoring the two different zones, the sanctuary zone, the unrestricted zone, to try and get some good hard data in terms of wildlife use, in terms of beach conditions, and vegetation. As this board knows, Countac is a very environmentally sensitive area, and thankfully we have a great conservationist who has placed an easement over hundreds of acres of this property in the interest of promoting conservation. So the framework for the pilot study, sets out monitoring and reporting protocols. So after a 3-year time period, we would then have some hard data to reach a determination as to whether or not it's in the better interest of wetlands protection to restrict a portion of the beach to vehicles. Some of the, at the first hearing on the application, it was suggested that one of the options we look at is string fencing, as is utilized in restricted endangered shorebird areas as a means of deterring vehicle activity. I should say that for the purposes of the study, we are simply looking to restrict vehicle activity from a portion of the beach. We're not, the applicant is not looking to restrict pedestrian use. So the public would still be able to stroll the entire stretch of beach, even beyond where any deterrent is installed on a temporary basis to vehicles. In addition to string fencing, some of the other options that have been looked at as a temporary deterrent is the use of perpendicular snow fencing. We looked at the potential installation of other types of fence, post and rail fence, rope and post fence, or more rigid fencing. And then what the applicant has done in responding to my report is to is to try and provide an objective review of those various deterrents in terms of their possible pros and cons, inclusive of the proposal for placement of staggered boulders. Because the intended goal of this pilot study is to create a wildlife sanctuary area, it was not only incumbent upon me to create a framework for monitoring enhanced wildlife use of the affected beach, but also enhanced wildlife use of the headland and naturally vegetated headland areas landward of the beach. Currently, there is a shore parallel agricultural 6-foot-high wire and post fence. And I'm also recommending that during this 3-year period within the pilot wildlife sanctuary area, that we also remove that fence line so that there is totally unrestricted wildlife movement from the shore into the naturally vegetated uplands. Fences, as this board knows, can not only create barriers for wildlife movement, they also can unfortunately result in wildlife injury and death. So in the interest of pure conservation, I'm recommending that in the temporary sanctuary area that we also remove the shore parallel fence. Now, the report goes on to talk about the protocols that need to be established, with which the landowner has essentially committed to for the purposes of environmental impact assessment in the area. And with the exception of some concerns about my recommendations for fence removal, the landowner has agreed, at least on a preliminary basis, to weekly monitoring of the restricted sanctuary area as well as the unrestricted area, in order to get some hard data in terms of whether or not continued allowance for vehicle driving on this entire stretch of privately owned beach would adversely impact wetlands as well as their public values and benefits. What the applicant has suggested in his response to my report then is that rather than remove that shore parallel fence, that they remove the lower portion of that fence. The fence is about 6 feet high. They're saying that they would commit to removing the lower 18 inches in order to allow for wildlife passage under the fence. But they're a little bit concerned about removing the entire fence, even for the 3-year period, in the event that the temporary vehicle deterrents are not successful as far as keeping vehicles out of the sanctuary area. As you recall, based upon the initial hearing, the intensity of public use, particular vehicular use along this entire privately owned stretch of beach did result in not only rutting and compaction of the beach and damage to beach vegetation and potential impacts to wildlife. They also had issues with trespass further into the property and cutting of vegetation for bonfires and other uses. And so although they fully support the concept of going forward with the 3-year pilot study in order for this board to make a final determination in the end as to whether or not a beach vehicle deterrent should be installed 1,400 linear feet west of North Sea Road. They again have some concern about my recommendation for fence removal within the intended sanctuary. Karina, if you have that second map that shows the proposed sanctuary area and the restricted area, that would be helpful. So the primary recommendation in my report for a temporary vehicular deterrent would be to install a perpendicular snow fencing. And you would see that you see the hashed area, that is the unrestricted zone, and the sanctuary zone would be west of that. The only issue with installation of a perpendicular snow fence is that in the event of storms or ice pile up, that fence line would be easily damaged and would need to be monitored and cleaned up so that we don't have debris in the Bay Area. In terms of, well, we looked at, the applicant and I both looked at the potential to install wood posts spaced apart in a manner that would prevent vehicles from going into the sanctuary. I have some concern about the potential liability of that. If someone is driving the beach at night, they may not see the post, and you may have a vehicular collision with those posts. So in terms of the shore parallel fence, another possible option that I would perhaps consider for the purposes of the 3-year study is to install a post and rail fence as opposed to a wire and wood post fence. Now, one of the issues that we've run into with trying to install what's often referred to as wildlife-friendly fences, where you have a gap at the bottom in order to allow for wildlife passage, is that if the vegetation grows, that closes off that gap. So in the event that the board felt that rather than have that fence wholly removed in the sanctuary area for the 3-year period, that a fence modification was more appropriate, there would be a need for periodic vegetative clearing at the base of that fence in order to ensure that you have 18 inches. If you can keep that open at 18 inches, generally the fence doesn't pose a major issue in terms of direct wildlife passage. Deer can and fawns can typically get under that 18 inches gap, but anytime you have a very extensive agricultural fence, there are always issues in terms of wildlife collisions, and my report speaks to those concerns. So my recommendation again is that within the sanctuary area, that the shore parallel fence be wholly removed. So we truly have a open area and a restricted area, so that we can really do a good comparative assessment of impacts. I want to commend the landowner for at least supporting my preliminary proposal for a wildlife sanctuary pilot study. As Obviously, the study involves some cost, some significant costs that would be incurred, but we do have a landowner who, based on his history, is dedicated to conservation. So I applaud the landowner for expressing an interest in working with the town to do this pilot study. So the further details of the study framework are set out in my January 2021 14-page report. There are also even field data collection sheets in there as well. And of course, if we proceed with this study, the applicant would need, it's going to require close coordination with the town. The report also looks at some other possible measures in terms of lessening adverse impact, including enforcement, but there are some concerns about how effective enforcement would be. The applicant, as expressed at the first hearing, has posted the property, has tried to do what they can to manage the abusive activities on their property, and it's been very difficult on the landowner's part. So, the goal is to potentially issue a wetlands permit, which would authorize this 3-year wildlife sanctuary pilot study, so the applicant could go forward and collect the necessary data and then bring that information back to the Conservation Board for a final determination at a future date as to whether or not the applicant's plan to place staggered boulders 1,400 linear feet west of North Sea Road to deter traffic, whether or not that will enhance the environment, enhance wetlands protection, and whether or not it will do it in a manner that does not pose issues in terms of continued public use of this stretch of beach. Beyond that, I recommend that board members read my report in order to get a better understanding of what this pilot study would be all about. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. I know that's an extensive report. You put a lot of work into that, and it shows. And it sounds like, Aram, it sounds like you agree with most of what Marty has expressed in his report. Are there any particular things that you feel need to be adjusted at this point?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Marty. Well, I think Marty correctly laid out our position on the parallel fence, and his alternative of maintaining a clear passageway under at the bottom is something that we can certainly look into. On first blush, it appears to have merit to me. I think the central thing that my client wants to get across is that if we're going to do a true scientific study, you need an experimental and a control area, and we have to have a vehicle deterrent in place, which will actually control vehicles. It can't be symbolic; it needs to be actual, and therefore, we did what I believe is a reasonably robust analysis of the different alternatives, and that's in the report that we submitted, but it's easily summarized in the heat map table that we put together. And I don't know, Charles, may I share the screen and we could just take a look at that heat map for a second?
Yes, sir.
I don't know if it's going to let me do it. Hold on.
There it is. kicked himself off. I think he kicked himself off there. No. There he is.
Okay. I'm not sure that I can do this from my pad, so I will just, if everyone that has a copy of our report, I would just ask you to turn to, the cover photo, which shows the conditions from just, within the last week. These are the types of conditions that occur out there. And so we really need to have a deterrent that's going to be robust enough to withstand these types of conditions. And so what we did was we put together the chart, which is really the first page of the report. And we went everything from string fence all the way up to the proposed boulders. And, clearly from this analysis, and in my opinion, the boulders are really the place to go. However, on a temporary basis, I think the pilings and the bollards will achieve very much the same result, and also be aesthetically attractive and with very little environmental impact and very temporary in nature. So, that's really, from the applicant's perspective, the critical factor is that we have to have a vehicle deterrent that is robust enough to survive the environmental forces and to effectively deter vehicles. And anything really less than pilings and bollards is not going to accomplish that task. And so we would ask.
Well, Aaron,
yeah.
We need something there to deter the vehicles, because the vehicles are doing what? Is
Well,
it
I mean,
causing a negative impact to the beach, to the property? Because when Marty started talking about this whole proposal, he said it wasn't about restricting vehicles. It was about creating a sanctuary to protect the beach. So you're saying the vehicles hurt the beach?
Well, the basic premise here is, if we exclude vehicles from a portion of this beach, will the habitat improve? That's the basic scientific hypothesis being placed forward. That restricting vehicle access on a I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
I'm sorry, I was asking Karina to pull the property up on the GIS for us to look at.
Okay.
While she's doing that, so the basic scientific hypothesis is that if vehicle access is restricted on a portion of this beach, will the beach and dune and associated adjacent area to the wetland habitat be improved? In order to evaluate that from a scientific point of view, we have to actually have a deterrent that effectively excludes vehicles.
Well, I mean, you're talking about restricting 1,400 feet from the access point west and making it a sanctuary. So there's going to be no vehicles accessing that property from the access point on North Sea Road, 1,400 feet. They can't get around it if it's a sanctuary, correct?
Right.
So,
So
Karina, can you pull up the map? I don't know, as the earliest year you can pull up on this property.
Karina, why don't you show the map that was in my report that shows division between the temporary sanctuary area and the unrestricted area.
I want to see the maps from Earth that we have access to, and we can click on the layers from the earliest part on the GIS of this property to where we are today.
So you want to see an aerial photo?
Yes, sir.
Simply aerial
From
photo.
the GIS, from the GIS.
Yeah, she can present that.
And while Karina's doing that, there were, some other minor things that we thought would be beneficial to monitor in this process, including vegetation. We've written that up in our cover letter, explained some of the additional monitoring we think would be valuable. As we have stated in the past, the applicant has no ability or authority to enforce public rules, so any type of enforcement would still lie with the town of Southampton. Certainly willing to post educational and other appropriate signage about the sensitivity of the area. So there were a lot of things in Marty's report that we're in agreement with, and we've spelled that out in our letter. Our basic fundamental point of view is that we need a deterrent that is robust enough to accomplish the desired goal of deterring vehicles for a 3-year period of time in order for us to evaluate the potential benefits of doing so. Karina, if you could zoom in a little bit.
Which year would you like to see?
So I would like to stay zoomed out. And we could start with 76. That's cool. And you could click 1984, 94, and slowly click them up so that we could see the changes in the beach over time. On the layers. I had access to GIS, but since I haven't been reappointed, I don't have access to that subscription anymore. Go to the legend to the left, Karina. There you go. It'll allow you you can, if you go to the legend, you can scroll up, scroll down, sorry, go down. Keep going. Keep going. Should have the different years. There we go, aerial imagery. So scroll all the way down, keep going. Let's click on 84. They're all selected. So unclick all of them and we'll start from the bottom and work our way up. Keep going up because we have to unclick up to 2021. There we go. All right, so they're all unclicked. And we need the satellite image. Okay, stop. Right, now click on 62. That's fine. All right, now let's click on, now no houses on this property at this time. We'll click on 76. Keep going. Beach looks bigger there. Same. So if we kept doing this, I don't see a change in the beach. At 2008, go to 2008. Now, I don't see any structures really on the property except for the main house. 2010, beach looks the same to me. Beach looks the same to me. Scroll all the way. Now go to 2021, just for argument's sake. 2020, sorry. So if this project is about needing a sanctuary because this beach is being destroyed by trucks, I would argue and present that from 1962 to the present, the beach looks the same. I would also like to point out that I see various structures that have been placed on this property that are pretty massive if you zoom into them from 2007, and we see the changes from there to 2010. There's significant buildings on this property. There's blocked access on the west side from all the Boulder projects that have been put down. This project, to me, is not about protecting the environment. It's just about blocking access to four-wheel drive vehicles by saying that they're creating damage to the beach. I don't see the damage. Now, if the town wanted to take it upon themselves to block access to four-wheel drive vehicles, the town could always extend the guardrail at the end of North Sea Road. But for this to come before the board, the Conservation Board, and be about creating a sanctuary that at first it was putting a perpendicular boulders to the beach 1,400 feet away, allowing people to have 1,400 feet of beach from North Sea Road to the Boulders. Now it's a sanctuary, so no one can drive in there. So my question is we make a sanctuary for 3 years. There's no access, no cars. Put the guardrail up. Let the town make that decision. Get enforcement in there. And this should not be before our board because it's not about protecting the environment. And lifting up a fence and taking out 18 inches from the bottom up, it will affect deer. That's my business. That's what I do. And I pull deer out of fences all the time. So I don't feel as though this project's about the environment. I think that we're being a little bit misled and used to get to block access for four-wheel drive vehicles. And I'm not a fan of it.
Well, I would just offer that that's the goal of the study. In order to assess whether or not vehicle driving is not only having an impact on the beach conditions, but also whether or not it's impacting wildlife behavior and use. And I share.
Whoa. First off, I'm annoyed that your office even spent time doing this study when we're at a 25% staffing level and people are waiting to get their permits before this board, and they're not getting them before this board in a good amount of time. And you had time to put on this, but there's certain applicants that you can't meet with on their projects.
And the reason
resources on this, and I don't see the issue, which is what we've all said it was about. Well, which is what has been presented, that this beach is suffering because of the traffic. And I don't see it here. So why did we even do a study? Why did your office do a study when I don't see the issue?
I can answer that question because at the first hearing, the Conservation Board referred the matter to the town supervisor and the trustees to evaluate this project and report back. I was asked to attend a meeting with the applicant, the supervisor, and the trustees at the site. And as a consequence of that site meeting, the town supervisor directed me to prepare this proposal for the applicant and for the Conservation Board's consideration. So I was directed to do this by the town supervisor.
All right, great. And you've said that the beach is being harmed by four-wheel drive traffic, and I don't see it.
No, that's the idea, Mike. That's the idea of the study. So we have some hard data in terms of whether or not vehicles are having an impact on the wetlands and wildlife use.
You know what I learned about, you know how you stop four-wheel drive access on beaches? You throw a piping plover nest cage around the beach, and then beaches get shut down. This beach doesn't even have piping plovers on it.
And the reason may be because there is active vehicle driving, and there's an inability for endangered shorebirds to use this area. And that's
the area has piping plovers over there, and there's plenty of four-wheel drive traffic on it. West Hampton Dunes has piping plover nests on that beach as well. And there's four-wheel drive vehicles on that beach as well. So
Well, that's the reason why I'm recommending that we do a study.
So let's
So
do a
that's
study
hard-
and not restrict four-wheel drive access, because
Well, that's-
we obviously need the four-wheel drives to be on the beach to compare it to something.
Yeah, but,
You're
well, I
saying the
think you're
four-wheel drives are
misunderstanding-
the problem on this property. I don't see it.
I think you're misunderstanding the framework for the study. The study would keep the first 1,400 linear feet west of North Sea Road open to vehicles. The beach beyond that would
It's
be
a
closed.
sanctuary. It's a sanctuary. You had it gridded out from North Sea Road to the 1,400 feet.
No, I'm indicating that was simply indicated as a potential future addition, but the intent for this study
Oh.
is to have two zones. One 1,400 linear feet section that would have no restrictions whatsoever. The fence would remain, the vehicles would remain, the public use would remain. The second zone, the air would be closed to vehicles for the duration of the pilot study. And I'm recommending that the fence lines be taken down for the duration of that study as well. And that we collect data on a weekly basis from both zones and bring that data back to the board in order so that the board can make a determination. That was the recommendation of the supervisor. I did what the supervisor asked, and the board had referred this to the supervisor in order to evaluate it.
This is the most, it's not even worth it to even be kind about this. This is nothing about protecting the environment. This is about blocking four-wheel drive traffic. And if the supervisor and the town board want to do that, all they have to do is extend that guardrail at North Sea Road.
Not to speak for the
15 feet.
supervisor.
No, listen, because what science says is if we don't put fences and we don't put boulders and we don't do anything, it's better off, correct? I've heard you say that in the past. So if all we have to do is extend the guardrail 15 feet at North Sea Road and restrict your access, you want to do your study, well, go ahead, but don't use this board to do that, because this board doesn't see an environmental hazard, an immediate emergency hazard right now. I feel as though doing what you're doing is going to put someone in danger by blocking access, and it's a safety issue. I don't like the boulders. I don't like the fences. This is not about environmental issues. This is about blocking four-wheel drive access. If the town board wants to do that, extend the guardrail.
I don't think the town is prepared to do that, and that's why the supervisor asked me to propose a pilot study.
Okay, well, I mean, who's monitoring the golf course on this property? Are we going to now send the DEC in to monitor the golf course to see what fertilizers are being used on it? Is that in this?
The reason,
I didn't see that when I was reading the study.
The
I see
reason
number 3, install deterrents to stop, potential beach driving.
The reason application was made to the board is because the landowner wanted to place staggered boulders on the beach. Remember, this is private beach. The trustees have no jurisdiction because it's state waters. And in order to place boulders on the beach, you need a wetlands permit. Rather than issue an administrative wetlands permit, I recommended that the application be made to this board so that the board would have the opportunity to consider it and hear from the public. So
Well, you could do an admin permit because you just gave testimony about how it has negative impacts. And I'm looking at this thing and I don't see the negative impacts, especially when this property has had an 8-foot high tensile steel fence installed on it for all these years and nobody said anything about it. And you have asphalt on this property. You have a golf course on this property. You have massive amounts of structures on this property that weren't here until after 2008. And now all of a sudden we want to protect the environment. Let me ask you this. If we make this a sanctuary area, who can access it? And one more point I want to add, nobody owns below the high tide watermark. So I want to be clear about that.
The intent on part of the landowner, not to speak for the landowner, is to keep the entire stretch of beach open to pedestrian use. And again, to allow continued vehicular use to essentially half this beach and look at possible closure of the remaining beach to vehicle use. So yes, the public has the right to pass and repass between mean high tide and mean low water. But the landowner has been generous in allowing the public to stroll the entire beach, even though the remainder of the beach, landward of mean high water, is not state property, it's private property.
I get that. I totally get that.
Why
And
14?
I share
Why,
your concerns. Lastly, I share your concerns about the fence lines. And that's why I'm recommending, for the purposes of the pilot study, that within the proposed sanctuary area, that the fences be wholly removed. So I share your concerns, but the whole idea of this is.
I appreciate that. I don't think this study should ever have been done because I don't see the probable cause for it, except for the fact the guy wanted to block access from trucks on the beach. It wasn't because he was concerned about the environment. It was because there was bad players on the beach during a pandemic. Then the
Mr.
guardrail.
Chairman, I need to speak for the record on that, Mr. Chairman.
Mont,
The fact of the matter is we've submitted dozens upon dozens of police reports of abusive behavior on this property. We submitted documentation of vehicles driving through vegetation, destroying the vegetation, damaging the dunes. There is an issue here. The study that Marty's put forward is a reasoned and rational approach. We've asked for some targeted minor revisions to them in order to be able to accomplish the scientific goal of understanding whether or not restricting vehicles for a temporary period of time would have a significant environmental benefit.
why are we limiting it? Michael, just a second, all right? I want to be supportive. Why are we limiting it to 1,400 linear feet? Why not go further than that? That's number one. Number two, what wetland vegetation is being destroyed, Aram? I've walked over there. You've got a fence, and there's very little vegetation on the seaward side of the fence.
Exactly.
And I have to say that I'm in agreement with a lot of what Michael is saying here, that this looks to me like it's been put in the Conservation Board's lap to restrict vehicular traffic on this stretch of beach in the guise of trying to come up with some kind of sanctuary. And it doesn't look good to me.
All right,
That's what I said the very first night.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Rickenback.
No, I said, that's what I said the very first night.
And it keeps coming back to that anyway, because we talking about the study, but then we go back to saying about restricting truck access. So I said it the first night, just like we all did. This is an enforcement issue, and Aaron, you are 100% right. You submitted all the police reports you should have, but again, this board is not charged with that decision. That's the town board's issue and the supervisor. And if they want to restrict access to this beach because they can't enforce what's going on there, and your client has, to me, this is another golf course in the Pine Barrens. This is another truck beach. Things are only going to get worse out here. And unless everybody starts waking up, we're going to have these problems and we're going to have no access in this town. And it's an embarrassment to me to even see this application in front of us.
All right, well, may I address those issues that were just raised by Member Hine and Member Tessitore? With regard to the location of the Baffle, it was designed to be approximately midway down the beach in order to provide a suitable experiment and control area from a scientific point of view. Moreover, the most significant environmental damage was occurring on the western part of the beach. You're right, there's no wetland vegetation, but the wetland rules apply for 200 feet landward of the wetlands line and include all of that adjacent area, which this board has restricted many times in the past, the beach grass and the other native vegetations that grow and provide habitat and dune area. And that is directly and specifically being damaged by vehicles driving over it, as I documented in my previous submittals to the board. As
Oh,
far
it's not
as
from the boulders that are on that west side?
as far as the why it's in front of you, we must be in front of you. We have no choice. If we didn't have to be in front of you, we would not be here. But you have been designated by the town board to evaluate activities within 200 feet of the wetlands for their environmental impact on the wetlands. And that is the narrow scope that we have focused our application on. What are the environmental impacts of what we're doing? And the applicant has been very open to the town's suggestion that we come up with a pilot study, which, by the way, is not going to be inconsequential in its cost, and to move forward in that respect. When, quite frankly, they could have asked to put a fence at the end of North Sea Road, because it's all private beach. So when you say that this is in the guise of stopping four-wheel drive, I would reject that 100%. No, this is
Right. Well, Aaron, that's your opinion. That's your opinion, and I can understand you having that opinion. You're working for the applicant, and that's what the applicant wants.
Well,
Okay?
you know what?
But if in fact they want restriction, why don't they do exactly what Michael suggested? Go to the town board, have them put a fence up at the end of North Sea Road. Why won't they do that?
Because that's a town board policy decision, and if the town board wants to do that, the town board can do it.
Why doesn't your applicant do that?
My client does not control the town board. They control their private land, to do something on their private land, which requires them to come to your board.
You okay,
Well,
Marty?
none of this is passing this board because we see it for what it is. And we're not a fan of perpendicular boulders. That has never been done on any property before. Whereas except here, obviously, because you have the perpendicular boulders on the west end. I forgot about that. But
the town your board just approved the same kind of structure around the corner on two properties on the date of the first hearing of this application. Please.
Perpendicular?
Yes.
No, we didn't. Which one? Which application is that?
They went across the entire
that was probably to protect environmental issues, Aram, not to block truck access.
Oh, really? But it does in fact block truck access, doesn't it, Member Tessitore?
No, I'm just saying.
It does not do that. It blocks truck access, and it provides an environmental benefit. And part of the environmental benefit it provides is the blocking of truck access, which is causing destruction.
I just showed you clips of aerial imagery from 62 to 2020. We all saw it. Everybody watching the Zoom.
And I've submitted photographs within the last 6 months that show people driving over the dunes and through the vegetation. And you showed aerial photographs where the property division line was the width of the beach. Please, that was, talk about an obvious obfuscation of the facts. That simply does not hold water. You have in your possession incontrovertible documentary evidence that there's an adverse impact occurring to these adjacent area habitats that you have an obligation to protect. You have an applicant who has put forward a proposal, has been responsive, and is willing to work hand in hand with the town to undertake a pilot study, and you persist in denigrating them and basically calling them whatever it is that you appear to be saying.
Come on, don't go personal, because that's not fair. That's not fair, because every image is a snapshot in time, and a GIS photograph does not have bias. It's giving us a snapshot in time of the condition of that beach from an area view without bias. A photograph by an agent has bias.
Well,
so
then go
I
down
would argue that any
photograph of them driving through
lens has a bias. They're trying to, push forward on everybody else.
I
work
reject
with the
I
television.
reject that. That is an abusive statement, sir.
I don't see how. How is, I'm
Yeah, neither do
telling you
I,
that
Adam.
that
And
a photograph's a
Adam,
snapshot at a time.
Adam, let's stick to the topic, all right? Please,
Yes, sir.
please.
Absolutely.
I would like to
The
pull something
problem, if
together
it's a
here.
problem of someone driving over vegetation, which I said I find hard to observe. You say you have snapshots there. Is there not a fence there where you've taken the snapshots?
The fence is landward of the vegetation
Well,
line.
maybe we should move that fence. But that's no need to block vehicular traffic.
Well, we also, one of the goals of the study is to look at wildlife impacts. And the reason for that is much of what the wetlands law is about is protecting and enhancing habitat for wetland dependent wildlife. Some of the critical wildlife species in this area include diamondback terrapin, which, as the board knows, is an estuarine turtle that needs to come up on the high beach to nest. And there are endangered shorebirds among other species here. So this is not just about the study is not just about looking at impacts to buffering vegetation and erosion of the beach, but it's also to look at whether or not vehicle driving is potentially having an adverse impact on wetland dependent wildlife, which this board is charged with protecting.
You want to do some kind of study like this, Marty. My suggestion would be to do a massive study about the effects of bulkheads on removing the beaches that we've had for the last 50 years.
How about less building in areas that are so
To me, would be
sensitive?
a worthwhile study.
I don't want to cut off anybody from presenting information and building the record for this application, but there's a lot of scattered approaches here that I'd like to pull together and get focused on what we're trying to do tonight, so we can actually accomplish something. There is obviously, what I'm reading here is there's a certain level of distrust by some board members as to the real issue of what we're really doing here. I don't want to address that directly, but there is a lot of information presented here on environmental testing. And Michael, you do bring up some good points that the beach has not significantly changed from an aerial view perspective. That doesn't show the detail of what goes on down there or what could have been going on down there. We don't have the answers to that. But this is what I'm seeing throughout all this, that if the town board chose to stop all vehicular traffic, they could. If the landowner chose to stop all vehicular traffic on his property, he probably could. What's before us is a proposal to stop approximately half of the traffic. So for the proponents of beach traffic on four-wheel drive vehicles, this is a good alternative because the status quo probably will not continue, and the alternatives that have been presented are both very extreme. I would suggest that here is an opportunity to try something to see if the four-wheel drive traffic can remain on this beach, at least on half of it, and perhaps it'll get opened up again. But
I have a question. If we're going to restrict four-wheel drive traffic on this beach, when you look at this map the way it's depicted right now, and you see Cow Neck Road, and you see all these other areas going through the wetlands, are we going to restrict four-wheel drive access by the property owner as well to not drive around this property? Because then maybe we have something. Because then it shows that you care about the wetlands and the environment. But if we're not restricting all four-wheel drive access, and we're just creating a baffle of perpendicular boulders to block the beach and create a sanctuary where people have been using it for years, For 3 years now, you can't use the beach or the wave of a wand. Come on.
One of my large concerns about something like this is looking down the future a little bit. And once you do a study like this, number one, I'm a little skeptical about how you're going to measure the outcome, the results. That's number one. Number two, it's very easy to say after 3 years, oh yeah, it worked. It really did improve the wetlands. It did great things for the animals. And what's going to happen is you're going to just say, well, let's leave it that way. And that's going to be a start, okay? And they're going to do this all along the beaches throughout our town of Southampton. That's exactly what's going to happen.
First night I called it death by 1,000 cuts.
There you go.
I'm not getting involved in it.
There you go.
So for you board members who are speaking negatively on this plan, what do you want to happen?
Well, remember, Harry, there are only 4 out of 7 of us here tonight. 5 of us out of 7. We're missing 2 people. So
Yes.
if we're going to make a real important decision, maybe we should make sure that everyone's here.
I mean,
Well,
make
we-
sure.
It's up to the, it's up to the, up to the applicant.
Well, maybe there's public interest.
I hear you, Tom, and that's fine. I'm not asking for a decision. I'm asking for, what is your vision? What should we be looking at as the Conservation Board as to the activities on this beach?
The first note I said, if he's concerned, the applicant is concerned with trucks driving up onto the dune, placing some boulders along the perimeter of the vegetation parallel wouldn't bother me, because it's stopping it from driving landward of that. Perpendicular, it doesn't help us. It only helps him. Parallel, it would stop them from driving onto the dune. That's what they're saying. My recollection of the original application, just project description, was that the goal was to restrict vehicular access. That was right in the application. So that's why I say, if he wants to restrict vehicular access landward of the edge of his vegetation and up onto the dune, something along the perimeter can solve that without restricting access to vehicles on the beach itself. I would look at something like that, but nothing perpendicular, nothing that blocks the beach itself from vehicular access. That's where I want, if anything at all.
Okay. Aram, that has not been part of the proposal that of the applicant that you represent.
But I brought it up the first night too, and if they didn't pursue it, they must not want it.
I don't know if the applicant wants it or not. Let me just clarify what you're talking about. So let's say, for example, we start at the end of North Sea Road, and we go some distance seaward of the vegetation, whatever that distance is, a foot, 10 feet, 22 feet, I don't know. And we do boulders all the way down the beach out to the point. Is that what you're talking about?
I'm not talking about a solid wall, but something that
No,
would make it
staggered, spaced.
Spaced enough so the vehicles wouldn't be able to slalom through it. And nothing too tremendously high, but I mean, something that you could at least get that, your goal of not allowing them to traverse onto the vegetated parts of the dune. Something. Fencing or boulders, maybe a combination of both.
No,
Right,
that fencing has to go.
I mean, whatever. Something that prevents what the applicant says his ultimate goal is, to stop them from driving onto the dune side because it's wrecking vegetation. We can see from the photos that the width of the beach itself is not changing, but the width doesn't say how much of the beach is vegetation versus not vegetation. I can see that point too. But as far as and that other property that was brought up, I think those boulders were placed there for erosion control of the bluff, not necessarily for vegetation, driving on vegetation. But back to this one, just something parallel in a manageable distance and spacing, so that no one in their right mind would try to slalom in and around them.
Well,
I don't want I don't want a solid wall either.
I can certainly bring that back to my client and ask them if they're willing to consider that.
Okay. They might see that that's not going to solve their problem either, and it's just an exercise in futility.
Perhaps, my objective here is to find a solution that satisfies what is, to my observation, an apparent environmental impact in a way that gets everybody out with their pants on. I think that this property is being documented being abused, and it's deserving of protection. Is there some other idea that the members have that they want me to consider?
Yeah, I think that fence has to go. I think Cow Neck Road, we need a covenanted buffer surrounding that pond over there, saying that there's going to be no vehicles driving around that area at all.
If this is simply not the subject of our application.
What's that?
I said that's not the subject of our application.
Sure it is, because anything that comes before this board is subject to a covenanted buffer, potentially. We're talking about you're telling us that driving near the wetlands is causing an issue. You have a trail, Cow Neck Road, going right through that wetlands. So why wouldn't we restrict that access as well?
I'm sorry, I don't think that passes the nexus test. There's no nexus between what you're asking us to do and what we're asking to do.
I'd like to jump in for a second. I mean, I agree with Aaron. There's no nexus. Martha Reichert, Toomey Latham Shea, 33 West 2nd Street, Riverhead, New York, 11901. We're all forgetting that there's a conservation easement over this entire property. So I hear Member Tessitore's concerns. That easement's held by the Peconic Land Trust, and it actually specifically prohibits recreational driving throughout the entire property. The protections are in place. The property is monitored. And again, it's not part of the nexus of this application that's before the board. But I want to take a little bit of time to also discuss something that perhaps we didn't focus on when Michael had us go through all those aerials, is that there used to be 7 beach access roads running perpendicular to the shoreline. The applicant in 1999 came before this very conservation board and chose to abandon all those roads to allow the vegetation to come back in. So this applicant has a history of trying to protect the wetlands, the beach vegetation, and the adjacent areas. So I just want to bring that back to the focus of what's happening here before this board. And, if you have any questions about the terms of the Peconic Land Trust conservation easement, we can go over them. It's but it's not part of the property that's under review for this board right now. I mean, this property has received over the years approximately 15 wetlands permits for different activities. They've all been, it's been reviewed, but the application before this board is limited to the project description. So that's what I want to say for right now.
And Martha, just for the record, would you explain who you're representing?
Oh, yes. I represent the applicant along with First Coastal.
Okay, thank you. Marty, are you comfortable chiming in at this point to give some, at least a rudimentary view on what a row of boulders parallel to the beach, what impact they might have?
Well, I know that the board had asked me to discuss the matter with the town supervisor, and I know he had significant concerns about any significant boulder placement on this beach. He, obviously had concerns even regarding one perpendicular line of boulders, and that's the reason he recommended that we do a study in order to assess the potential impacts of placing the boulders before a determination is made as to whether or not to authorize the boulder placement. I don't know that I would have some concern about the board entertaining the placement of boulders along a very long stretch of beach. You would be significantly modifying the beach and habitat conditions without without there being any emergency or any significant erosion event that might make you want to consider boulder placement. Let's think about some of the other cases where the board has authorized boulder placement. And virtually every case that I can think of was for the purposes of stabilizing eroding beach conditions. So we don't have, while beach vehicle driving can rut and compact beaches and result in some erosion, we don't have the kind of erosion that might warrant authorization to place boulders along, let's say, 1,400 linear feet of beach or more. So I think it would be a major change to the natural habitat conditions. Now, as was mentioned, boulders had been placed on the northwest facing beaches, and I had authorized that boulder placement by administrative wetland permit. And if the board members look at Aram's report, if they look at the last page, you can see a photo that was taken of those boulders that I permitted. The difference was that they had a significant eroding, collapsing vertical bluff line. They had an eroding shoreline, and while this permit was issued probably about 20 to 25 years ago, the only reason why I gave consideration to boulder placement was because of significant erosion. We don't have those conditions here. So I would have some concern about any large-scale boulder placement on this beach.
What about fencing, Marty?
Well, as I indicated in my proposal, fencing always poses an issue. It poses a risk of wildlife injury and death. It interferes with their movement, their dispersal, their behavior. So I am not in favor of retaining significant lengths of shore parallel fence, nor am I in favor of installing a new fence line seaward of the existing fence line. The wetlands law is all about doing many things, but one of them is protecting habitat for wetland-dependent wildlife. And the installation of a new or relocated fence line further seaward on this beach would have direct adverse impacts on wildlife. However, that being said, my preference, as indicated here, is to do a scientific study to see what impacts changes to beaches have. But I would have concerns about authorizing the installation of a second or relocated line of fence parallel to the shoreline.
I don't think I'm talking about a second fence. I'm talking about the wetlands that Aram referred to as being run over by vehicular traffic. Those areas, a fence could certainly be placed in those areas to prevent people from going over that vegetation.
Oh, yeah, yes, it could. And Aram is referring to the upper beach, but the installation of fences interferes significantly with wildlife habitat, with wildlife behavior and movement. So I would have concerns about the fence. I just want to quickly mention the photo that you're looking at right now is the boulder placement that I authorized by permit at Cowneck on those northwest facing beaches. You could see that the boulders were placed in a very staggered fashion so that it would break the energy of storm waves and storm surges without accelerating erosion. So I don't know if this is when you speak about placing additional boulders along the beach, I don't know if this is the concept you have in mind, or if you have a linear line of boulders in mind.
Well, we're basically trying to come up with a solution to prevent people from running over the wetlands that Aram is talking about.
Well, this, certainly if you,
We're not talking about boulderizing the entire stretch of the beach here, Marty.
certainly if you place boulders in a staggered fashion, similar to what was done on the northwest facing shorelines, that does deter or prevent vehicle traffic on that beach, if that's the question you're answering. But I think to permit that along a long stretch of beach here where we don't have significant erosion threats would be a bit of overkill.
Do you see negative impacts from placing boulders along the beach in this kind of fashion that you see here? In the picture?
The reason I permitted it is because there was, I felt at the time, and again, I issued this permit about 25 years ago, I felt that there was a need to stabilize these beaches to prevent excessive loss of the bluffs and headlands. And in the area that has been photographed here, no, I think it was done in a manner that does not result in significant adverse impacts to wetlands or to, yeah, it has some impacts in terms of shorebirds, because it limits the amount of potential nesting area. So it has certain impacts. But, certainly if boulders are placed along a stretch of beach, my preference has always been to do it in this manner as opposed to a linear vertical wall that tends to cause erosion and loss of beach as a result of vertical deflection of wave action. This type of boulder placement diffuses wave energy and deflects that energy in different directions, thereby keeping the beach stable. And the boulder placement along these portions of Cownett, based on my observations, were very effective in achieving the goal of maintaining the beaches and bluffs while not significantly adversely impacting wildlife.
We have never discussed the wave action ruining this beach. Now we're talking about wave action on this beach when that has not been brought up by the applicant or anyone else about this beach or an erosion. This has not been discussed. The biggest complaint was the truck access. So now we're talking about placing boulders for the wave action. It has nothing to do with the wave action at this point.
Which is which was exactly my point. Yes, I had permitted boulders in a different section of beach on this property, but it was not for the purposes that are being discussed here. You're correct.
Michael, yes, we're not talking about an erosion problem on the beach that's presented by this applicant. And the picture we're looking at is not part of this application. That's a previous application for a different purpose. But we have before us a difficult dilemma, and that is that there is apparently damage done on the beach, and the beach benefits by four-wheel drive vehicles. And what is a rational way to resolve that problem while respecting the homeowner rights and the desires of the public and of the town? And we're searching for a way that fits, that walks that tightrope where everybody can come away and say, okay, I got something I need, something I want. We may not get it all.
In the event that authorization for shore parallel fencing is considered, I would recommend perhaps that be a post and rail fence. A post and rail fence would prevent vehicles from going into the higher vegetated area, but it would not interfere with wildlife movement. I mean, the difficulty, of course, is if you have significant ice pile up in cold winters and significant storm events, you do, as a landowner, incur the cost of having to repair the damaged fence lines. But in the event that a fence line is authorized as a shore parallel fence, my recommendation would be that you go with a post and rail, because that will not result, and that's a post and rail without mesh or wire, as that will deter vehicles but not result in adverse wildlife impacts.
So, Aram, it looks like it would be advisable to explore some other alternatives here. And I think we've touched on some tonight, and there may be others. Would you be willing to go back to your client and explore some of these things we talked about? But one of the things I'd like you to do is to remove some of the barriers in our normal way of thinking, so that perhaps we can come up with something that might not look normal to what we expect, but might be functional and might accomplish the goals of all the parties. This is what I'm thinking about, to give you a little more concreteness to what I'm thinking. We talk about a fence line. I don't think we need a fence line. I put up a fence to keep something out. But it's not the fence, it's not a post and rail fence that keeps the vehicles out. It's the posts that keep them out and prevent them, because the rails aren't very tough. I wonder if we could do a post and rail fence, but not put the rails in, for example. Perhaps change the spacing. Perhaps a rock, not wall, but a line of rocks of some staggered fashion that would accomplish the purpose of making it not fun or advisable or desired, or not have an incentive for anyone to drive beyond that line on the beach. So in so doing, we maybe come in the back door of doing something to incentivize keeping the vehicles on a lower part of the beach, where there may not be quite so much damage to be had, and the wetlands and their plants and the flora and fauna can be left more untouched. Those are just some of the thoughts, as I can expand on what I've heard tonight by some of the board members and others. Does that give you a little something to take back to your client?
Yeah, I appreciate the guidance and the suggestions, and we're looking for, as I said, a way to accommodate the maximum amount of interest while protecting the property in a way that this property deserves.
In all this discussion, I didn't once say anything about the cost. I really am not knowledgeable about the cost of any of these things, but that's something that you can discuss to see if something is outside of where the budget is or not. But first, we need a concept of something that accomplishes the purposes of what we're talking about.
Also, just to point out for the record, we do in fact have a New York State DEC permit for the boulders. I don't know if all the members are aware that it was submitted and is in the file.
Yes, I think you brought that to our attention in the previous meeting. And we may come back to that. I don't feel that we've focused on where we're going to be at the end yet. We just may have to go further down this path and find something or discover that something else is not going to work before we can come back and choose what's best. Yes, Martha.
Thanks, Harry. I want to thank all the board for giving us good feedback, but you know, it's sort of echoing in my brain something that you just said now, Harry, which was to help you remove the barriers to your normal ways of thinking. And, you know, one of the things that I wanted to point out, and I pointed out in my letter from November 2nd, but that was months ago, is that, you know, the conservation board, say someone on Cold Spring Point Road wants to build a house or they want to have a bigger deck. They come before the conservation board, and as part of this board's duty on how to make sure that that construction minimizes impacts on wetlands, you also extract from the applicant a covenanted non-disturbance, non-fertilization buffer. And the applicant grants that covenant. It's a recorded document that runs with the land, perpetual document. And the terms on that document are standard, and in every single one in that buffer, this board regularly restricts vehicle access in the buffer area. Here we have, you know, sort of a little bit of a different situation, but we have an applicant who wants to put up a structure, you know, and part of the, you know, result of that structure will be that it limits a certain amount of vehicular access in order to protect the wetlands. But, you know, I would like this board to remember that it regularly asks applicants to give up their rights of how they use, and more often than not, their beachfront. And so, you know, I gave several examples in my letter that were in this area, but, you know, so Cold Spring Point Road, Peconic Crescent in the Shinnecock Hills, East Shore Drive in North Sea. You know, you can look at the covenants that this board required of those applicants, and they all put a buffer over their beachfront on their shoreline, which now limits vehicular use. So I just want to bring that back to the board of that it's not beyond the pale that is a regular condition this board imposes upon waterfront landowners. You know, and I just want to leave you guys with that.
Thank you, Martha. Yeah, you're absolutely right. We could, and we have that authority to do that.
But
that is still a possibility, but I think that does not meet the goals of some of the townspeople. And here we are trying to weave that line between the legal stuff and the rights of the homeowner, and also living in a small community without making too many changes. And there is the legal stuff, there is the community benefit, and we're trying to see if there's something that can be done to achieve some of the desires of both. We may fail in that. There's no guarantees. But you're absolutely right. There are things we could do, and we could make it very simple and just start doing things. But I think we'd miss the boat if we did that.
No, I agree
got a
with
question
that
for you.
sentiment. I just think that you know, that the board has a certain you know, barrier to elements of this application, but I wanted to just remind the board that the board regularly imposes those limitations on properties all the time in covenanted buffers.
we do, but I would argue that this board really can't block access from the high tide watermark out. So that covenanted buffer is great, but we're talking about blocking the high tide watermark, where
Well-
people have a right to, you know, egress and ingress.
They absolutely do. They have a right to the foreshore, which is also.
I don't see how we can okay.
This
Boulders
project doesn't go beyond the high water mark. So there is no impact on the passing way to this project. That is the foreshore that the public has an unimpeded right to, and that's not being blocked by any means as part of this project.
We're actually blocking it by making it a wildlife sanctuary study area. So.
No, I think that's the point. The public has
No,
an unimpeded
no,
right.
there was no, the testimony that Marty gave is that there was no part of that was blocked for pedestrian traffic.
Pedestrian, correct. But this has been a beach that's been driven on for many, many years. And that access is kind of a right for the people of this town.
I'm concerned by that statement, Mr. Chairman. That the authority of this board is specified in chapter 325, which I've been reminded of numerous times at these hearings, and it doesn't include such rights of access that are spelled out in deeds and other legal instruments. I don't think that those are within the purview of the board.
I agree, but I don't feel as though this application really has proven that it's seen all practicable alternatives for what you're asking for. This application has come before us as just an application to block the trucks from driving on the beach.
No, sir, that's an incorrect characterization of our application.
Personally, it hasn't made it its case, so.
I respectfully disagree. That's an incorrect characterization of our application. The purpose of the application is well spelled out. And if you have another practicable alternative that you would like us to review, we'd be happy to review it. We submitted detailed analysis for this board's consideration, and I've been asked this evening to look at additional things, which I will take back to my client. If there is something else that you would like me to investigate, please tell me what it is.
I've been clear about where I stand on this application. I feel as though that fence needs to be removed.
I understand that, but you discussed practical.
I don't mind the post and rail fence going across that back area either. And I wouldn't mind boulders on the grass up there above the high tide watermark. If that's what you want to do to stop people from accessing the wetlands and destroying it. I don't have an issue with that. I have an issue with anything perpendicular to the beach. And I really have an issue with making it a sanctuary study area and stopping all truck and vehicle access that's been going on for over 50 years, for 3 years to do the study. I think we could do the study without restricting the access.
May I ask a question of Member Tessitore?
Yes, ma'am. And hi, Martha. We miss you, by the way.
It's good to see all of you guys. I guess my question is, you just said that you're opposed to a perpendicular fence or barrier. And, I guess my question for you is, on what basis? If you could just elucidate that for us.
What do you mean on what basis?
Is it based on the adverse impacts to the wetlands, or is it based on another?
I think there's other ways of doing it. And I just gave you an example of what you can do to achieve your goal. And it's not something that we usually do, is perpendicular boulders along the beach. So I have no issue with like a split rail fence. I think that would be way better than an 8-foot high deer fence that's high tensile steel running the length of that beach. The turtles can get under it. The deer can jump over it. I think that's great. But from what we've heard, the property owner is not a fan of removing the fence that's there now.
So I just want to make sure that I give this board the fullest analysis. So what I heard was that a post and rail fence or shore parallel boulders seaward of the vegetation and landward of high water are suggestions. Is there another suggestion that you or any other member wants me to investigate?
No, I think that's good.
Well, you may want to investigate different types of fences. I certainly would not be opposed to a fence with an opening at the bottom.
Okay. But in all cases, these would be shore parallel.
Right.
Well, it's not 8 foot high.
Yeah, but in all cases, these would be shore parallel deterrents.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Well,
as far as
examine-
as far as any stones being placed, they only really need to be large enough to deter someone from driving over the top of them. They don't have to
Right.
be nothing huge.
Well, no, we
There
don't
can be
need
a couple of
stone.
clusters here and there, even unevenly spaced, so that it's impossible for someone to drive around, or drive over.
Well, if you saw in the last photograph in the report that we submitted, those stones do not stick more than a few feet above the beach, even in the largest case.
Right, but it's just the placement of those that I don't like either, the perpendicular aspect.
Aaron, we need to adjourn this. Before we do that,
Very good.
I want to see if there's anyone in the public who'd like to speak on this application. And Charles, can you see if there's someone in the public who'd like to speak?
How much time you need, Aaron?
A couple of weeks.
Okay, Charles, is there any?
Why don't we do a month to make sure you have enough time?
There's a few people, but there's no hands.
Okay. Okay, I don't know if the public can hear me speak, but if you do want to speak.
They can hear you.
Okay. Then without anyone in the public who'd like to speak, we'll adjourn this hearing for, Aaron, you say, is it 2 weeks or 4 weeks?
Might as well do 4 weeks.
I'm doing the Zoom.
Just so the board knows, we already have 4 hearings scheduled for March 10th.
Okay,
What do we have the meeting after?
We have 5 on March 24th.
What do we
How
have in the next one?
what about,
We have one right now on April 14th. And on February 24th, we have 3 right now.
I'll take the 24th and get it done.
February 24th?
Yeah.
Oh,
Is
no,
it-
I have a hand now. Should I bring him in?
Is that someone who wants to speak on this application?
Yeah,
Okay. And
Hang
bring
on.
them,
they're coming in. Chuck Bowman.
What's up, Chuck?
Video on, Chuck. There you go.
You're muted. You're muted, Chuck.
Unmute. Unmute yourself. There you go.
There you go. I'm sorry, guys. My laptop, all of a sudden, is watching the whole thing. My laptop decided it was not going to connect. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we
Yeah.
can.
Okay, great. I just wanted to give you a little background. I'm not calling as representative of anyone other than myself, who is a resident of North Sea. My uncle, Dr. Gaynor, was Peter Salm's personal physician, and I've known this property since I was 10 years old. I have been there, tower shoots, duck shoots, and spent basically my whole life driving down this beach. Probably the best week fishing place, in Southampton during the run. And I also still live right down the road in Cedar Crest. And I just wanted to give you a perspective of a local person, and that's my intent here. This is not, the beach is a cobble beach. It's very stable. It's not a question of the four-wheel drives doing damage to the beach. The fence is up. No one goes near the vegetation. And it is a question of enforcement. 50 years ago, there was no problem. 20 years, there was no problem. Now you get people from all over going down there, building fires, parking illegally, walking down the beach. There's no restrooms. I understand the homeowners' issues because it certainly is wrong that that kind of activity is taking place. That property is a gem, so it should be protected. But also the beach itself has been a community resource for many, many years. And I think it's important that the Conservation Board recognizes that. I agree with Michael. This is not a Conservation Board issue. It's a town of Southampton enforcement issue. Just this past year, when all of a sudden out on the web, there was, oh, there's great fishing. You know, all you have to do is drive down at the end of the road and you can all go fishing. And the town had to come in and put up no parking signs. They had to enforce their no parking rules, and you could only be a town resident if you passed. So, you know, it seems like it's out of the purview of the Conservation Board to me. You know, my expertise, we do wildlife studies all the time. You know, it's not a piping plover beach. The vegetation there has been in the same place for 30 years. You know, so I don't think the four-wheel drives are the problem. It's the people who are in the four-wheel drives who are allowed to go down there who probably shouldn't be down there. In contrast, if you go over to Town Point, which is also an area where you can go four-wheel driving, the residents are absolutely adamant on making sure you behave yourselves, clean up your garbage, and they don't really allow any bad activities going on. So I think the question is the board, how does the town enforce that? I don't think the board enforces that at all. But certainly this is not about erosion. It's not about wildlife protection. It's about enforcement of bad behavior, which I certainly can understand, but I don't think it's the Conservation Board's purview to get into that. And that being said, you know, I hope you make a wise decision.
Thank you, Chuck. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak?
Motion to adjourn to February 24th.
1 second. Gina, bring in.
Hi, Gina Rigdon, DKR Shores. Also, Chuck, I agree with you. Marty, I agree with you. Martha, I agree with you too. Miss you. It's basically an enforcement issue. I do have history on the property, and this applicant has done many years and years of services to benefit the community. Mr. Bacon has dedicated his life to environmental preservation. I do see the issue. I see the issue with people. I do also see the issue with blocking access between low water and high water. There's got to be some kind of solution. Maybe someone hasn't thought of. I'm sure there's probably signage there noting that part of the beach is private property. People will go around that. I like the idea of the posts, but maybe pile something bigger to block access to high water. Something very simple, something very non-invasive. I love the idea of it being possibly, you know, a study site, and potentially, you know, if you set up some sand fencing or preservation area, they will come. It's possible. But all in all, yeah, this is an access problem. This is a private beach. The point of the boulders is to block access, and it's the property owner's right to block the access of the portion of the beach that he does own. But the portion between high water and low water, that's fair game. And I'm not sure, Chuck, you're right that this is a conservation board issue of blocking the beach. I think the actual structure that the town board might approve might come under the conservation board authorization, as well as the state, of course. But, all in all, I think, blocking any access to a private property, potentially besides signage, maybe cameras. So those no do-gooders that are throwing out beer cans and leaving toilet paper on the beach. Of course, it's disgusting. And potentially, somewhere upland, maybe he could put up some surveillance cameras, and that could be helpful and also be a deterrent, and also, not harmful to the environment at all. So I'm sure there's some solution between a combination of things that could possibly work for this property. I did the original permits for the house, for the stone armor that Marty approved on the west side, for the polo field, for restoring the barn, for restoring the pond. I did those original permits, and I do understand the applicant's need. I understand the applicant's right to privacy. And I also understand that a good way of preserving that right is protecting it. So I think back to the drawing board, something very simple, signage, cameras, maybe, be suggested.
Thank you, Gina. Is there anyone else who wants to speak on this application?
I see no other hands.
Okay. George, you were making a motion?
A motion to adjourn to February 24th.
Second,
All in favor? Harry, aye. Tom? Jerry?
aye.
George?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Take care,
Thank
Aaron.
you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening.
Take
Night.
care, Aaron.
Thanks, Aaron. Good to see you, Martha.
Yeah, Martha, bye.
Thanks, Aaron.
A020063, Andrea Lisso and Maria Stoyanova.
They are coming in.
Hi, I'm here again, Gina Rigdon, DKR Shores, here to represent Luso and Maria. I can't pronounce your last name, I'm sorry. So we had what we thought was going to be a good proposal, an awesome vegetation plan, a small pool, but realistically, and if you let me share the screen, if you map it out.
Sis there, in there?
Hear me?
Link sis on your phone?
Am I on?
Yeah. Does it
Huh?
connect?
It's still on, I think.
He's just muted.
Thanks, Chuck. Here you are. But mapped out, and if you let us or Andrea share the screen, if you look at an aerial picture, the efforts were there. They really were. And we tried to do everything to possibly arrange a pool at a certain setback. And then we realized that the pool is completely in the shade. It's out of character for the property. And it's basically useless. Why build a pool if it's completely useless? I have a pool and it's in the sun, and it would I don't want to have to chop down trees to put a pool in. And if you look, I don't know if you'll let me share a screen because I kind of really want to share the property with you. Yeah, if you let me share the screen, I will come up with, hold on. This is the backyard. Okay, this property I also have history with. The prior owner, his name was John Dunn. In order to legalize a deck addition, he did. He came before the board and he mitigated the project by a really tiny 15-foot buffer area. Keep in mind the wetlands are on the other side, the west side of the road, on the west side of a not paved road. It's unnamed, it's a right of way, basically, which is sort of common in Hampton's area. Notice that before Mr. Dunn sold the property, he did a very lush fertilized lawn. Fast forward, property changed hands to the Andrea Lusso and his lovely wife, Maria. And they really do want to preserve and protect the environment. There are 3 large mature trees that are on the property. And we would like to protect those. We would like to expand the buffer. And as you know, as we all know, these are just some of the pictures, that nitrogen waste and our water is in compromise. This is a Wells Creek tributary. And we had, so basically I said, instead of just completely abandoning this application, would you just entertain a lesser buffer in order to mitigate getting rid of some of this lawn for a small swimming pool? So I don't have, I would have to scan in what we originally proposed. It was a 10 by 24 swimming pool on the northeast side of the house, where there's absolutely no, hold on a second. So basically, can you see my aerial? Are you there?
No, we can't.
No, we see a picture of the backyard with a patio table on a deck.
All right, now I
Yeah,
have.
table on a patio.
I'm gonna get rid of that one. Okay, can you see the aerial now?
No,
No,
Come back.
not sharing the screen now.
Hold on. Share. Okay, now can you see the aerial?
yes.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a tributary on Wells Creek. There is a, I don't know if you could see my hand. There's Wells Road is an unnamed, well, actually it is named, unpaved road behind the house. Harbor Road, this is the front. This is the subject house. As you can see, this is 17, and there's a swimming pool and a patio, roughly from aerial about 43 feet away from the tidal wetlands on the opposite west side of the road. This is 19 down here. I'm sorry, this is 53 feet away. This one at 19 is about 40 feet away. So what we were asked, and obviously swimming pool, we have to be 100 feet away for an accessory structure. We really did try to make that. It's just not practical for this house. It's not really consistent. I get it's pre-existing non-conforming rule. My point is I really want to try to find a happy medium. I want to find a happy client. I want to find a happy town at the end of the day. I want to increase buffer area and get rid of lawn because, you know, we will see in the executive summaries of Southampton town CPF, water quality improvement, Long Island South Shore Estuary Reserve program with nitrogen loading. And our 2 biggest culprits are A, sanitary systems, and B, fertilized lawns. So what we had come up with, which isn't perfect, so keep that in mind. Can you see this share?
Is there a survey of the proposed swimming pool?
I don't have, I have a current survey that we drew over. Can you, let me just close this one so I can share the next. Okay, can you see this share? Here we go. Share screen. Hold on a second. So this is a rough alternative of where the pool was proposed originally. And then basically I talked to the client and I said, listen, this is what the state requires. The state requires 75 feet, no buffer, cut and dry, pretty simple. Conservation Board requires more. 100 feet plus a buffer, you're gonna have to give up some of your backyard. They're willing to compromise. I would like to find a happy compromise. I would like to save premature trees. I would like to get rid of some of the lawn, and I would like them to have something resembling a pool somewhere in a sunny part of the backyard. So in the aerial, if you had noticed, the only part of sun in the backyard at all is right where the pool is at a 75-foot setback to the pool patio. This is negotiable. The buffer, pink, you see highlighted, saves it's about a 40-foot buffer instead of what's there. And it saves the 3 trees and provides a buffer to the south where there's absolutely no buffer whatsoever. We would like to negotiate the setback and the buffer. I have sent this to Marty. He has declined it to be point blank. If the pool is a little smaller, I'm sure we can negotiate that. If maybe we can move patio back a little further and make the pool smaller and make the buffer a little bit bigger. But the owners don't want to lose their entire backyard, but they are willing to give up the grass. And I do understand the need to have some entertainment area for your pets, for your kids, for, that kind of thing. And so I'm really trying to find the happy medium between doing good for the environment and trying to be consistent with the rest of the pools in the neighborhood, because it's really hard to explain to a client why everyone else has a pool in the neighborhood but you. And it's really hard for a client to see an application like the first one that was on your list today that had a bulkhead and the swimming pool was 40 feet away from the bulkhead. And it's really hard to explain to a client why I'm holding a permit where the pool is at 61 feet, that environment approved, and a deck was at 48.5. It's really hard for me personally to be rejected right off the bat when I lose a job, when the environmental analyst says you never have a pool here. And I go photograph an adjacent property last week, and there's a pool 20-something feet away from a bulkhead from a wetland boundary that was approved by the board. So I think we could do good here. We could get rid of some lawn. We can create some buffer where there's hardly none. And as far as swimming pools, I really don't see anything in either one of these executive summaries about a saltwater swimming pool being harmful for the environment. If there is, please point out what page. We even offered to do a new IA system, already rejected it as being not necessary or applicable for this project. So I would like to give you a buffer. We would like to build a butterfly garden. We would like a pool as well. So I am impressing upon the board to grant some happy medium so I can go back to the surveyor and say, okay, this is what we should be plotting because this is what the board will approve, instead of wasting their time and money and getting nowhere. So I would really like to hear the board's comments, and something very directive, like we want the pool at 75, we want a buffer at 50. I mapped it out, I scaled it out. To save the 2 trees in the back, the buffer has to be at 53 feet. A linear buffer at 53 feet and a pool at 75, that may work for the client, but they're here to talk to you.
Gina, would you clarify something for me? I see
Sure.
something in blue here is 12 by 30 foot pool, but then just to the south of that is a proposed 10 by 24 swimming pool.
That's,
What are
that's
your,
where we originally had the pool, where it says proposed 10 by 24 swimming pool, but that pool's completely in the shade, no shade. And I said, well, if we shift it 15 feet or so to the west, it will at least have some sun. So, and then the buffer, the green is the lawn that they would like to keep, even though that may not be okay with the board. The pink is the absolute necessity of buffer I would like to see to get rid of some of the lawn that's lush and green and save 3 trees. So if we could shift the pool 15 feet or so to the west and at least maintain a 75-foot setback to structures. And that's the patio, the gray around the blue rectangle. This is patio. And that could be a permeable paver. We're okay with that. That could be even turf stone on this side. That's fine. The pool could be slightly smaller. That's also negotiable. 12 by 24 or something like that. My girlfriend has one that you guys approved. It looks lovely. And
how wide is the pink buffer?
this pink buffer is, Andrea, are you on? I didn't draw this particular thing, so I think this is at 53. Yeah, it does, because it encompasses this tree. Can you see my marker? This circle, this caliper tree, we actually spent time to have the surveyor come back to locate the trees. This tree and this pink buffer is at 53 feet. And right now, there's only a 15-foot buffer in the back from the edge of the dirt road. So that's at 25, about 25 feet. I'd have to scale that out. Right? So the pink line is 53 feet. That protects two mature, large caliber deciduous trees. And right now, the buffer is only at 25 feet. Instead, I would like to put it at 53 feet linear across the whole property, and then even come up, and it doesn't have to be in a straight line like this, but maybe, sort of arced. So it's, garden style. And keep in mind, there's absolutely no buffer to the south. This property over here, there's a swimming pool. There's hardly any vegetation at all. For the property to the north on this side, has decent vegetation, is pretty well buffered. So if we expanded the buffer, potentially through here, sort of arced, and then kept it at 53 here, it would protect all of these 3 trees, which is my main goal. And then I think that would be, I could, like I said, I would like to see it on a survey. I would like to see this area kind of expanded, not like linear like this, linear across the back, but then over here maybe arced and expand this area buffer.
Could you tell me what the distance, what the setback distance is to the original proposed 10 by 24 swimming pool?
The original is 96 feet.
96.
96. Like we really tried. And then we realized it's in the shade. And I get cold easy. I get cold at 70 degrees. I don't want to pool in the shade. That's a waste of money.
You said that the applicant was okay with offering an IA system.
Yes.
Yes?
Originally, yes, but it was declined.
What do you mean it was declined?
It was declined. I offered to the client, I said, listen, this is some of the mitigations you may have to give up. You may have to do a new IA system to mitigate it. You may have to do a buffer. You're definitely gonna have to do salt water, that's for sure. And on November 23rd, I sent Marty an email. And then he replied, Regina, thanks for your comments and feedback. Based on my recent site inspection, the existing covenanted wetland buffer is well vegetated, so there's no need for supplemental plantings in this area. With regard to the suggested IWTS installation, any wetland water quality improvement benefits would be accrued from such action, and the resulting decrease in nitrogen inputs to Wells Creek could not be reasonably concluded as adequately compensating for the lesser wildlife habitat resulting from your proposal to establish a naturally vegetated wetland buffer at 35 feet, less than what's required under the law. So we offered, I think it was 60, I'm sorry, it was 60. So we offered 60 at the beginning, and the pool was not quite where it is. It was shifted a smidgen, like 2 or 3 feet this way. And a little bit bigger.
I'm just confused because I asked, what do you mean it was declined? The applicant didn't want to put the IA, or they were cool with putting in an IA system?
They originally offered it, and Marty said that wasn't okay. That wouldn't benefit.
Let me restate. Hold on, I'll restate my question. Would they be agreeable to putting in an IA system right now?
Can I just finish reading this email from Marty? Therefore, as it would prove difficult to show a direct nexus between mitigating the impacts of the pool versus mitigating the impacts of the existing septic system, my preference, consistent with the wetland permit issuance standards, would be to establish a naturally vegetated wetland non-disturbance, non-polarization.
Does anybody else have difficulty hearing?
Covering those portions of the property lying within 75 feet of the wetland boundary. He basically wanted 75 feet buffer for a 90 setback foot pool and rejected an IA system when we had offered it originally.
Could you answer Michael's question?
Yes, it was rejected by Mr.
No,
Shea.
that's not what he asked you.
We offered.
If the applicants would be willing to put in an IA system at this time.
Andrea, are you on?
Yes, I'm on. Can you guys hear me?
Can we see you?
Yes.
Okay. If you can hear me, hi, good evening, and thank you for listening. My name is Andrea.
Maria.
Gina is helping us with the case. We had always been willing to invest in the IA system as a way to sort of negotiate and mitigate the placement of the pool closer into the sunny area. So to answer directly, yes, we are open to putting that system in if we can get the pool into a usable place of the yard, and if we can maintain a reasonable amount of the yard for ourselves and our family, and what we can do with it without sacrificing, the majority of it.
So you would be willing to put an IA system in and give a 40-foot buffer, as we see with the pink line. Is that correct, Gina?
That's at 53, not 40.
Oh, that's 53. So 50.
That's 53.
A 53-foot buffer and an IA system for a pool.
I think it's a win-win, but
I love it.
Michael and Gina, just clarify, that pink does not look like 53 feet. Are you
you
saying
can't see the whole survey.
Okay. Okay.
I literally, like, I can actually pull it up and write. So you can see where 53, I put the 53 mark. I put the 75-foot mark.
But Gina, when you move away from the microphone, we don't hear you.
Yeah, I'm having a hard.
I'm trying to, that's 53. You see where the line is?
Wow.
That's 53. So it's a lot. It's a lot of lawn.
Come on.
I would like to see, but me personally, I'm sorry, Andrea, but I would love to see some of that lush lawn go bye-bye. It's fertilizers. And I would love to get your pool for you, but.
Yeah, look, I'm sorry if I'm interrupting anybody. I'm not too familiar with the due process here, but we were putting forth this proposal here, knowing that the IE system was not really helpful or helping us in any other ways. But we are certainly happy to do that. We understand the impact on the environment. We are certainly conscious and do care about that. And we're trying to balance that with the interest of making a usable backyard. So the proposal that you see here put forth by Gina is based on the fact that we understood that the IE system wouldn't make any difference in the trade-offs between buffer and non-buffer. When it comes to the lush green area, obviously we are not, that's not our main priority. I think it's pretty clear here that our priority is to be able to use as much of the backyard as we can that we have purchased, as well as having the pool in a good location. But we are absolutely open and willing to plant any kind of vegetation that would help maintain the area in its most sort of natural shape as possible. So,
Karina, can you zoom out of this survey a little bit?
I'm not sharing this.
I can't do this just
Oh,
because it was something that he shared with me.
Karina, that's better. A little bit more.
Karina, can you put it up for us?
I can share the original survey, but you have to stop sharing your screen first.
Hold on. I don't know how. Hold on a second. Stop share. Got it. Got it. Okay. Is it the original one or is it the second one when we shifted the pool a little? My last one was 1/7, is January 7th. Can you go up a little? I can't.
Well, that's what a 10 by 20.
Just a little more.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure it's the right survey. Scroll up just a little. Yeah, that's the last one.
So that buffer's correct, what you were proposing.
The 53, this survey doesn't reflect the 53-foot buffer or the other shed. I mean, the new pool where he wants it, which is, you can't see where the new pool would be, see where it says 10 by 10 frame shed to be removed? That's where the new pool would be. And then there's a tree right in the center of the backyard, sort of near, it says 15-inch caliper right there. That's where the 53-foot buffer would be. So I can come back to you with a new survey. I mean, if you're with an IA system, if you're willing to entertain this.
Where would that IA system go, in the front yard?
It would be in the front yard. That's where the sanitary is right now, if you could see it.
Cast iron cover?
Yeah, and I
tank,
think this, right, I think the septic tank could probably be retrofitted to save some costs and disturbance to an IA tank. I'll have to check with FujiClean on it. This is a relatively new system, but I think we might be able to retrofit it. So it's an IA system. And then with the 53-foot buffer, right, where that large caliper tree is right at the center, make sure that that's protected. And then the pool basically is not where it is right now. It would be shifted about 15 feet where it says 10 by 10 frame shed to be removed. But I would like to present a new survey to you so you really can see it.
Yeah, Gina, I think your other survey with the pink was more descriptive because that put the pool in the location that you wanted.
Right.
And also put the buffer in the location you wanted. We just couldn't see the rest of that buffer, so it was a little difficult to see the scale. The board generally likes to see an IA system. On many occasions, we've also used that as mitigation to allow for a lesser buffer because the addition of the IA system is that important to the board. It does reduce nitrogen in ways that we haven't had over the past years. So
I agree with you. Sure, I agree. That was my goal.
So I'm feeling that we can work with you to achieve something here. I need to get more specifics, more precision on just where these lines are so that we can see what we're talking about.
Okay.
I want to hear from other board members Generally, we've all agreed that that IA systems are good things to have in this town.
I would like to hear the rest of the board member weigh in too, please.
Is Marty going to comment on this?
Yes, I would like the opportunity to speak.
Go ahead, Marty.
Hey, good evening, members of the board. Marty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. There is a preliminary advisory report on file dated November 17, 2020. Karina, if you could bring up the latest aerial photograph, it would be helpful. I did have an opportunity to return to the property yesterday, as was indicated by the applicant. We had initially come to what appeared to be an agreement to construct the swimming pool approximately 96 feet from wetlands, with, of course, opportunity for a deck or a patio at a close setback. Initially, I had recommended that, consistent with the wetland permit issuance standards, that we seek to achieve the required setbacks as close as possible, they being a minimum of 100 feet for structures and 75 feet for buffers. You'll note that the abutting lot on the north side has a significant covenant to buffer. Their buffer actually takes in those portions of the property within 100 feet of the nearest wetlands. So one of my goals from early on was to develop a plan that provided a contiguous buffer with that existing natural vegetation on the adjacent lot, to remove the existing fence line, because that would enhance that area as wildlife habitat, and also provide greater opportunity for wildlife dispersal and movement. When the applicant indicates that they're proposing a 53-foot buffer, the board should recognize that they would not be dedicating 53 feet of the rear yard to natural vegetation. The 53-foot buffer would cover those portions of the property lying within 53 feet. So the portion of rear yard that would be dedicated to buffer would be less than 53 feet. So they're not offering to give up 53 feet of a rear yard. While the applicant was in the midst of considering various proposals for the property, appeared to be that the applicant was concerned about protecting existing trees, and had some concern about potential shading of the originally planned pool site. For that reason, I returned to the property yesterday and found that likely only a portion of the pool would be shaded during certain sections of the day. And the reason for that is that it's the southerly portion of the house that is two-story, and so the primary shading is over the northerly one-story portion of the house, with some shading extending into that patio area. But the pool length, if it was reduced a little bit for most of the day, that pool would appear to be outside of the shade. I looked at that, even though that's not one of the permit issuance criteria, knowing that that was a potential concern on part of the applicant. Consistent with many other applications that come before this board, I had recommended that if they could not meet the required 100-foot construction and 75-foot buffer setbacks, that they seek to maximize the setbacks, as the wetland impacts that are related to a greater intensity of exterior uses, inclusive of pool and patio areas, are best mitigated by maximized naturally vegetated buffers. The buffers are essential in terms of protecting and enhancing wildlife and lessening the disturbance to wetland dependent wildlife from noise and activity associated with the pool and patio area. That's one of the many reasons why the code recommends a minimum setback of 100 feet and 75 feet. When the applicant had expressed some concern about dedicating those portions of the property that are within 75 feet of wetlands to natural vegetation, we worked out a reconfigured buffer, which was the semicircular buffer delineation that you saw in the prior plan, so that lawn would bow out in the center of the property, where the buffer would be less than 75 feet. It would be about 65 feet. I have concerns about the applicant's buffer plan, not only because they're seeking significantly less buffer setbacks than required by code, but through this reduced buffer plan, there's an inability to connect well with the extent of natural vegetation on the abutting property to the north. And while I also support tree preservation, I'm not a big fan of linear strips of buffer alongside property lines, as you see in the applicant's proposal along the southerly property boundary, because the adjacent property to the south is extensively cleared and develops that linear strip of buffer really provides no functional wetland wildlife habitat, nor does it provide promise in terms of cleansing and filtration of contaminants. As was alluded to the applicant, the neighboring properties that you're seeing with pools, those pools were indeed built prior to the effective date of Chapter 325. And that's the reason why you're seeing extensive pools, extensive yards, and minimal or no buffers on those properties. If the applicant proposed an IAOWTS, it does appear that the installation of that septic system may call for the removal of large existing trees on the roadside of the house. And I mention that because it appeared to be that the applicant was very concerned about any potential impacts to the existing large trees on the property, which certainly enhance the value of the premises. And while the installation of a IA may diminish some of the nitrogen inputs, its installation could be negated by allowance for a more expansive lawn, even if the landowner was willing to maintain that area as a non-fertilized, non-chemically dependent lawn. As this board knows, we have no ability to enforce non-fertilization buffers. So some of the benefits that would be provided by the IA would be negated by the potential close proximity of a nitrogen fertilized lawn to the waterway. The applicant had made some comments about the lesser setbacks and buffers that are required on bulkheaded properties, as this board knows. The code allows for less stringent setbacks on those properties because areas of wetlands that have been impacted by bulkheads can have lesser value as wildlife habitat than a natural system, as you're seeing here. So while I'm always amenable to working with applicants on the size and configuration of a pool in order to lessen impacts, I am yet concerned about the very expansive area of lawn that the applicant is seeking approval for, as that lawn not only would increase the risk of impact from nitrogen fertilizers to the adjacent wetlands and creek, but it would lessen the potential to protect and enhance habitat for wetland dependent wildlife. While the property is separated from the wetlands by an existing road, it's an earthen road that periodically is severely flooded. So although there is road there still is significant environmental sensitivity at this site. So in the event
that road?
What?
Can people drive on that road?
You can. Sometimes it's difficult to get down that road because anytime
you drive on it, you can drive a car on it, right?
Yeah, anytime.
It's a travel road.
Yeah, anytime you have astronomical high tides or full moon events or storm flooding, a good section of that road is flooded. So, you have to, you got to have the right vehicle, but it is nevertheless an earthen road and does provide access to some homes. So in the event, just to finish my testimony, in the event that the board sees fit to entertain a less setback for construction, I would recommend that rather than have a buffer with a narrow strip along the southerly property boundary, that the board look to expand the buffer and to try and provide for a buffer that is better contiguity with the covenanted buffer and preserve natural vegetation on the abutting property to the north. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty.
Thank you. Andrea, if you're still hearing, I think we could try to accommodate some of that by planting some additional bayberry, which would provide screening to match the buffer up the linear side of the northern side of the fence line, as well as the southern line of the fence line, and protect that large caliber tree that exists on the southern extent of the boundary of the property line. And that would still give usable space for the backyard, decrease the buffer area, which now is only 15 feet wide by more than double, almost 40 feet, and then provide for additional screening and buffer going up the two side property lines. And then I would like the board to take a look at that once I get it on a survey, or at least I could revise the site plan as well, save the owner some cost, so we can kind of mark it up a little. But I think that primarily, 53 buffer width at a varying width that extends up the side boundaries would definitely be doable and applicable for this project. And as Marty said, yeah, this is a traveled road. I'm sure it does flood during hurricanes, which is that much more important to me that that lawn's not fertilized, because when it does flood, that's where it all goes. I do disagree on one point that bulkheaded parcels and the wetlands derived thereof are not less valuable than properties that have vegetation and or roads between the tidal wetlands. I think bulkheaded properties and water immediately adjacent to swimming pools, IA systems, or any construction or habitation whatsoever is primary extent, but that's not this project. So I think it's something that we can definitely work with. I would like the board to see a new revision with the expanded buffer, with a non-linear fashion, with some vegetation going up the property lines, and then potential retrofitted new IA system for the septic, if that's what the board would like.
If I could just,
If
if
they're
I could
okay
just,
with just the buffer, that's fine too, but you know, we're trying to give more.
if I could just offer a quick comment in the event that the landowner entertains reconfiguration or expansion of the buffer on the north side of the property to better connect with the existing natural vegetation on the adjacent property, I would recommend that that be done as more as a sweep as opposed to a narrow linear strip, because you want to create a good functional block of habitat and wildlife movement corridor. And you know, the way that would be achieved is even if the board goes with your current plan, is to just gradually curve the buffer up on that side to better protect that existing vegetation, so that the extended buffer has a significant width to it. Thank you.
I agree, and I think as landscaping design goes, that would probably be preferable is sort of something on a, you know, an arc and reverse arc. So if you could just let me play with this a little bit, and I'll have a new revision back for you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Gina, how much time do you want?
I would say at least 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
Okay, we have a busy agenda in March.
I'm aware.
Yeah, we've got 5 and then another 4 after the meeting.
Yep.
After the next meeting only had, well, now we've got 4. So April maybe sometime.
Andrea, you don't have room on March 10th? I could probably sketch something up for you.
I mean, if the goal here is to come back to the board with a new proposal for a buffer that is based upon the assumption that we would put a new AE system, I think it will be fairly quick for us to take the existing survey and redraw the buffer, redraw the pool. So we could come back to this board as early as next week, from my perspective.
It's every 2 weeks, so the soonest would be 2 weeks.
Let's do it in 2 weeks. You don't need
survey.
You don't need a whole new survey. Just
Right.
mark it you have. When you get it all set, then put it on the survey.
Okay. I could do that because I'm a certified drafts person, so I very easily could have the CAD file sent to me and have a revision for you.
All you need is a colored pencil and a ruler.
You got it.
Okay, is there anyone in the public who would like to speak on this application?
See no hands.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn this for 2 weeks to February 24th?
So move.
Second.
All in favor? Harry, aye. Tom?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Michael? Michael?
You're muted, Michael.
Okay, thank you. See you in
Thank
2
you.
weeks.
Thank you, board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The administrative wetlands are in your packets. We go on to resolution of conditional approval. And we are starting with A020019, Joanne DeSarlo. Any discussion?
Hughes,
Move to issue.
Second.
Resolve that a conditional wetland permit approval be granted to Joanne DeSarlo for the proposed project upon the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor? Harry, aye. Tom?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
And Michael, you're recusing.
abstain.
Okay. A020067, Michael Douglas Kunkel and Llewellyn Cox. Any discussion?
Move to issue.
Second.
Resolve that a conditional wetland permit approval be granted to Michael Douglas and Llewellyn Cox for the proposed project upon the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor? Harry, aye. Tom?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
A020076, Leah Morgan. Any discussion?
Move to issue.
Second.
Resolve that a conditional wetland permit approval be granted to Leah Morgan for the proposed project upon the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor? Harry, aye. Tom?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Preliminary review signature determination, A020037, Michael Nardi.
Good evening, Marty Shagan. This application relates to property on Shore Road, fronting on North Sea Creek in the hamlet of North Sea. There is a preliminary advisory report on file dated February 8, 2021. The action is classified as type 2 action pursuant to seeker. The application has been filed in order to bulkhead a natural shoreline that would result in loss and destruction of existing tidal wetlands. There are also unauthorized accessory improvements at the site that need to be legalized. I had initially recommended the landowner make application to the Board of Trustees. Trustees considered the application and said that the jurisdiction was with the Conservation Board. This is an application for which significant additional information is needed in order to make a determination. As such, I'm recommending that a public hearing be held.
For what date?
March 24th.
Motion to schedule a public hearing for March 24th.
Is that one of the five that were, or one of the ones that you already had mentioned in the?
Yeah, that was,
Okay,
yeah, that
so-
was already scheduled. Yes.
Second then.
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby schedules a public hearing for March 24th, 2021, and requires that a notice of public hearing be published in the town designated newspaper pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-8C of the Town Code. All in favor? Harry, aye. Tom?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
020038, Diane Ardolino.
This application relates to planned modifications to an existing earthen private road in Flanders. The changes to the road would result in loss of tidal wetlands as a consequence of creation of three pullover road shoulder areas. Fill would be deposited. The road would be surfaced, resulting in significant adverse impacts to wildlife. This is an application for which significant additional information is needed in order to make a determination. As such, I'm recommending that a public hearing be held.
For what date?
March 24th.
And it's already one of the ones you mentioned.
Yes.
Okay. Motion to schedule public hearing for March 24th.
Second.
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby schedules the public hearing for March 24th, 2021, and requires that a notice of public hearing be published in the town designated newspaper pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-8C of the Town Code. All in favor? Harry, aye. Tom?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Michael? A020056, Latoya Realty Corp.
This application relates to a vacant piece of land that has frontage on Fish Cove in the Hamlet of North Sea. There is a preliminary advisory report on file dated February 4, 2021. The action is classified as type 2 action pursuant to seeker. The applicant is seeking approval of significantly less wetland construction and buffer setbacks than are required by code. It is an application for which we need significant additional information. Make a determination as such, recommending that a public hearing be held.
For what date?
March 4th.
Okay.
Motion to schedule public hearing for March 24th.
Second.
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby schedules a public hearing for March 24th, 2021, and requires that a notice of public hearing be published in the town designated newspaper pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-8C of the Town Code. All in favor? Harry, aye. Tom?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
A020071, Paula McKinnon La Journée.
This application relates to residentially developed property on a private road known as Cold Spring Point Road in the Hamlet of Tuckahoe. There is a preliminary advisory report on file dated February 9, 2021. The action is classified as type 2 action pursuant to seeker. The applicant is seeking a wetland permit to redevelop property that's surrounded by tidal wetlands. This is an application for which significant additional information is needed to make a determination. As such, I'm recommending that a public hearing be held.
Motion to schedule a public hearing.
Second.
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby schedules the public hearing for March 24th, 2021, and requires that a notice of public hearing be published in the town designated newspaper pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-8 of the Town Code. All in favor? Harry, aye. Tom?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
A020077, Carl Berg and Rachel Berg.
This application relates to an existing residentially developed property that has vegetated bluffs fronting the Little Peconic Bay and the Ross and Road Associates subdivision. The application was filed in order to rectify unauthorized rock revetment that was constructed along the shoreline. As well as to address unauthorized residential improvements and significantly greater setbacks than are required by code. The applicant has come forward with a plan that's consistent with the other beach and bluff naturalized stabilization plans that have been approved for this area. Boulders would be placed in a widely spaced, staggered portion along the beach in order to break up a wave of energy. Additional compatible sand and native vegetation would be brought in as well. This is an application for which we do have sufficient information to make a determination. As such, also I should mention that as indicated, we already held hearings on very similar applications along this stretch of beach. As such, I'm recommending that the hearing requirement be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing?
Second,
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-80 of the Town Code. All in favor? Harry, aye. Tom?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
George?
aye.
Michael?
Aye.
A021009, John McNerney and Angela McNerney.
This application relates to a residentially developed lot in the private community of Shinnecock Shores in East Quogue. The property has frontage on a bulkheaded canal. There is a preliminary advisory report on file dated February 9, 2021. The action is type 2 action and thus is not subject to seeker review. The applicant has come forward with a residential redevelopment plan for this property that was generally consistent with the standards and policies that the board has set forth for Shinnecock Shores. When I visited the property yesterday, though, I found that there was a spectacular mature white oak, which needed to be preserved. The applicant wanted to protect the tree as well. Accordingly, we worked out a reconfigured deck plan that would provide essential setbacks from that tree. That also provides for a buffer starting along the bulkhead that curves landward to protect that tree as well. The applicant is most pleased that we were able to work out a design that not only achieves their goals, but protects this significant tree. This is an application for which we have sufficient information to make a determination. As such, recommending that the hearing requirement be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing?
Second,
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-80 of the Town Code. All in favor? Harry, aye. Tom?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
George?
aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Resolution issue modification, CB 20008, Michael Titlebaum and Michelle Titlebaum.
This property relates, this application relates to developed property in the Remsenburg, Spionk area. The board had recently issued a wetlands permit to allow for residential improvements, conditioned upon establishment of vegetated buffers and some wetland reclamation and enhancement measures. The applicant now has submitted this application as they wish to install an IA or WTS. They also want to connect the planned tennis houses to the new septic system and install underground water service lines as well. There is no aspect of this application that would result in additional wetland impacts. Property conditions have not changed. They have not yet commenced the work that was previously authorized based upon my inspection yesterday. So this is a resolution that would allow for modification of the existing conservation board permit in order to allow for those improvements. Accordingly, I recommend that it be approved.
Motion issue modification.
Second.
Resolved that a wetlands permit modification be issued to Michael Titlebaum and Michelle Titlebaum for the proposed project on the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor? Harry, aye. Tom?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
CB 20032, Blair Meiserbuff and Jenna Klein.
You probably recall this application was discussed last August. Property is located at 8 Jagger Lane in West Hampton. The board had approved essentially a residential redevelopment plan that called for relocation and partial reuse of the existing dwelling. At that time, based upon my visual inspection of the house, I had recommended that they demolish the house and construct a new home because of the deterioration of the exterior walls and foundation. The applicant at that time nevertheless went forward with a plan to retain and relocate the existing house. The building division has since inspected the premises and and determined that the house cannot be salvaged. So the house that now is planned is consistent with the footprint and setbacks and buffers that were previously approved. However, the difference now is that an entire new house will be built and that the existing house will be demolished. I did have an opportunity to get out there yesterday. The applicant has not yet proceeded with the demolition. So this is an application to modify the existing permit to allow them to go forward. I recommend that you approve the resolution.
Motion to issue the modification.
Second,
Resolved that a wetlands permit modification be issued to Blair Mezaba and Jenna Klein for the proposed project on the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor? Harry, I. Tom?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
George?
aye.
Michael?
Aye.
And a transfer A020075, Aaron Finkel and Rosa Alios.
We had recently issued a wetlands permit for this property in order to legalize deck reconstruction and other amendments at the premises. The permit was conditioned upon establishment of a covenanted wetland preservation area, naturally vegetated wetland, non-disturbance, non-fertilization buffer, as well as the filing of covenants prior to the actual issuance of the permit. The property has been sold. The new owners are amenable to all the terms and conditions of the original permit. So this is a resolution simply to transfer the conditional approval to the new property owner.
Motion to approve the transfer.
Second,
Resolved that a conditional wetland permit approval be granted to Aaron Finkel and Rosa Alios for the proposed project upon the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor? Harry, I. Tom?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
George?
aye.
Michael?
Aye.
And is there anything else that needs to come before this board?
That's it.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Harry, I. Tom?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Thank you all and have a good night.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you, Charlie. Take care.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank